Alright, we finished up Ghoul, and now we get to move into Goblin. And Goblins are the most comical race, we'll put it that way. You have green skin and pointed ears, and we're gonna read a little bit of the paragraph here. Treacherous, obnoxious, misunderstood, dangerous, useless, tenacious, devious, malicious, and sometimes even charming. Uh, Goblins in game are very funny. Uh, they don't do a whole lot, and if you're playing a goblin, you're really playing it for to have the most fun at Shiftedlands, in my opinion. Playing goblins is really awesome. Typically, uh they hang out in groups. Most of the time it's a gang of goblins, and there are definitely times when goblins are the main bad guys of a given day or a given plot, and they're very regularly used. So when you play a goblin, let's see, many races hold an ancient grudge against these gobos, still killing them on sight or at a minimum working hard to hold them back in all their endeavors. Okay, so for the longest time, the two towns, the two chapters, right? They had they all the players came together and we had town bylaws and each town had a mayor and there was some form of government because otherwise a bunch of adventurers were like, out doing X, Y, and Z and nobody could really work together. There was a reason they came together to form a government. And in that government, they had a they, they had a bill of citizenship or a bill of rights or something, and goblins were not involved. Goblins didn't have so for the longest time, to my understanding, goblins didn't have rights, and that included player character goblins. So you could you could kill a player character goblin and have no government. Now, people were going to be like, that's a jerk move, but there weren't any technical consequences for doing so. I believe that changed. Goblins definitely are like a citizen race. They have rights now. It's very important to them. And if you're playing a goblin, we're gonna have to take a look at the skills to really understand why this is kind of like acceptable. Because what you might have heard so far is like, wow, that's kind of mean. Why would I ever play a goblin? You're gonna see why here when we go through the actual skills. But an important note to make is that it says costume, green skin, and pointed ears. But you also have to talk like this for 24 hours. It's pretty awesome. Talking like a goblin. I like treasure. I like shiny things. Goblins, all the goblins, they talk like this, okay? I don't think there's a rule about it, but if you're a goblin and you don't talk like this, people are gonna look at you weird. It's just how it is. Okay, enough of that. We're gonna but yeah, goblins have a voice. Where other certain races have accents, goblins are definitely the most prevalent in that. So we're gonna jump into racial abilities. Resist disease and resist poison. Okay, they we've talked about those specifically with Beastman. They have the same quantities as Beastman, right? They're pretty good. They're goblinoids, and I think most goblinoids have these skills as well. Goblins are pretty typically good against poison and disease. Cheat death. Okay, so so when you die in Shifted Land, there will be a time when I cover like the actual whole process in depth about how you live and die. That will typically be covered by a marshal at one point to you when you start playing the game. But until then, we're gonna have to wait for my video on this. However, every time you die, so like there's like multiple forms of dying in Shifted Lands, and the scariest one is when you have to go resurrect because that has the chance of your character permanently dying. Which is scary, right? Like so you're like that's the one that counts as actual death. Like you are not coming back from that potentially. So goblins, so essentially when you go to resurrect, you have a bag of 10 stones, and the first time you have a bag of 10 white stones, and then every time you die, you take out a white stone and you put in a black stone. And in this bag, you put your hand into the bag and pull out a stone, and if it's a black stone, you permanently die. There is no coming back from it. You just permanently die. You don't even get to retire your character. It's really bad. Like it's just gone. All of your hard work gone. So that sucks. Now, goblins get to add white stones to the bag. So they get to directly increase the amount of times they can die or the percentage chance of pulling a black stone, which is fucking funny as hell. That's so good. Uh, it's 10 build each and it's quantity 10 times. And so this is part of the reason why people were okay with killing goblins on site, even if they were players, is because permanently killing them is like not a thought process. You don't permanently kill goblins. They just have cheat death. Like it's really hard to permanently kill a goblin. If you play a goblin, they could be which you would imagine that there would be a ton of long time players running around as goblins. There's not. It's just they're like every once in a while somebody plays a goblin for a couple months. And I think right now, if I've been following the Discord correctly, this is July of 2023. There is a regular goblin player in the Discord. I imagine they show up. So there's every once in a while there's been a goblin or two, and a lot of people you can have up to 3 characters at Shiftedlands, and they also some people will play like goblin groups. It's fun. But yeah, cheat death. That's a very good skill, very unique to goblins. You're not going to see this on any other race in the rulebook, as far as I'm aware. Bonus cudgel. Cudgels are different from clubs. It's I I couldn't really tell you the difference between clubs and cudgels. I'm gonna be honest. But just like sword, it's an okay +1 with everything. Is +1 with cudgels and +1s with clubs. Pretty good. Now, dim-witted is an interesting thing. So it's a 5 build detriment, which means that you get 5 build when you take it, and it requires double the amount of research or teaching to learn a skill. If your teacher also has the dim-witted detriment, the amount of research is no longer required, or is no longer doubled. Uh, this is a okay downside. It is a downside. There are multiple times when you want to go learn something and you're like, "Hey teacher, can you teach me this?" And they go, "Cool, but aren't you dim-witted?" That's gonna suck for both, because it sucks for the teacher and it sucks for you. So even people without the dim-witted trait trying to teach you have to like deal with that, and it sucks. So most of the time, this is actually going to come up as a relatively big downside when it comes to like learning stuff and progressing your character. It's not the end of the world, and there you can definitely go. This skill has the hidden text of "Go find goblins to teach you other stuff," which isn't too difficult. It's not too difficult to find goblins. If you want to like go learn something, and you say, "I want to go find a goblin spellcaster," then it's not too hard to be like, "Hey, plot, I'm gonna go out into the woods to find a gang of goblins and hopefully run into a goblin spellcaster." Um, is that going to be safe? Debatable. Possible, very, very possible. Cannot use psionics. That okay. You're dim-witted. You talk like this. I'm not the smartest. They cannot use psionics. You pick this up every time. Very few characters are really afraid of picking up cannot use psionics, right? Like it's not a very bad detriment most of the time. Affinity cudgels +2 damage, and you cannot be disarmed. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that was part of the affinity. So yeah, you want to do cudgels. Let's see. Dead Man's Luck. This goes back to cheat death, and this is a very expensive skill here. 25 build, that's nuts. But it's also insanely good after drawing from the bag of reservoir. So if you pull a Blackstone, so keep in mind you have 10 extra white stones, and then if you pull a Blackstone, on the off chance you do, you can just be like, "Nah, I'ma pull again," and pull a white stone instead. This is busted good. This is really good in terms of like every person in the game would have this if they could. Like this is this is nuts. Every single person who's played for an extended period of time would have this skill if they could have it. So and goblins get that. And there's not I guarantee you there's not another race that gets this. We skipped over this because this is actually nuts. Dodge as a racial, as per the rogue skill. So knavery, it's an upper thing, but dodge is one of the best things you can say in this game. It essentially means that you dodge out of the way of an attack. You dodge out of the way of anything packet delivered. So you can't dodge AoE stuff. So like 10-inch, 10-foot radius fireballs or 10-foot radius voice sphere stuff. You can't dodge out of the way of that stuff. However, you can dodge everything else. And dodge is like people try and figure out the cheapest way to dodge as possible, and you get to just do it 3 times as a elder goblin. It's nuts. There's no other race in the rulebook that has dodge as a racial. This is amazing. So elder goblins are actually kind of nuts. And I think my brother has also played a goblin at one point, and I have considered playing a goblin at one point, because goblins get dodge as a racial, and that's literally like half the reason. Dodge is super good. It goes back to physical resists with gargoyles, where I was like, this is one of the best skills in the game. This is also like they're both defenses. This is also one of the best skills in the game, like hands down, as a racial that is. Sneaky Git. The cost of waylay is reduced by 1. Oh, uh, build 3 to reduce waylay by 1. That's pretty cool. Uh, Waylay is okay. There are some ways to get around waylay, and so a lot of the more experienced travelers, they will not kind of like blink at waylay. However, this is really good against like monsters and stuff, and being able to do it by 1. It's just, 3 build, do waylay 1 less. It's essentially a reduction, but explicitly for waylay, and that's pretty okay. Um, Immune to it's not immune, unaffected by poison and disease. Uh, Allows the character to ignore the effects. The skill renders a character unaffected by all types of alchemy magically poison. This includes healing and blah blah blah. So just like Elder Beastman, I think they get immunities to poison and immunities to disease, which are different by unaffected, but essentially they amount to the same thing, which is when I get hit by a scary poison, it doesn't work. When I get hit by a scary disease, it doesn't work. For 1 build each, too, this is actually like pretty okay. Requires you have purchased a minimum of 3 resist and a minimum of 3 resist disease. So going back to the main thing, you have to buy 3 of these, which is a lot of the times why I'll recommend buying 3, and just sitting with 3. Because if you getting hit by poison 4 times in a row typically isn't going to happen. It's more of like oh, here's a poison, and then it's not like poison, 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 poison. That doesn't really happen very often. Uh, so that was goblins. Goblins are pretty cool. They like shiny things. They like talking like this, and we didn't used to have rights, but now we do. Also, we're secretly one of the coolest races in the game. And good luck trying to kill me, idiot.